Morning, guys. This one is going to be a little bit different again. I've been trying to focus mainly on YouTube the last couple of weeks. I've had a few issues streaming on TradingView. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover, first of all, the DXY. I'm going to look at some of the calls I made back in April on the Forex side of things, and then jump into Bitcoin kind of later on. So if it's mainly Bitcoin that you're interested in and the crypto space, then I'd suggest you maybe watch this one on YouTube later on, and I'll actually put the chapters in specifically for that as well. So starting off, what I'll do is I'll jump across to DXY just to kind of keep in tune as to where we are. And although this is quite relevant to the big picture for Bitcoin, I think I just want to start on this as to what I'm currently seeing. So the longs and shorts of this one is I called this quite a while back, expecting a much bigger 4 move, which was this move here. So ultimately, what I was actually after on the weekly time frame, I was actually after this move to come back, giving us an A, a B, and a C. So in theory, we had a 3 sitting here. I potentially thought this could have been a 4, but looking at this a bit deeper, it's clearly to see we have an A, back down for a B, and up for a C. And therefore, my assumption is at the moment, given the weekly stochastic and everything else, is that we've now had our 4 in terms of the weekly. I'd like to see ultimately a bigger drop down. And I got a few forecasted levels for this on the smaller time frames, being the daily. So big picture at the moment is pretty clear. Now, you'll see why this makes a bit more sense in a second, and why this fits in, especially with Bitcoin, as we jump forward a little bit on into the video. But basically, what I'll do is I'll start now on this premise with DXY. It'll go back to, like I said, some of the calls on this going back April the 11th. So if you can see this here, you'll actually see that I was looking at, first of all, GBPJPY. So what I'll do is I'll come first of all and I'll put the GBPJPY on as the first call. So GBPJPY, and this is going to be kind of figure one. So again, if you're watching this on YouTube, I've actually got the channels across the bottom, and you'll be able to skip forward to where it is we are and what I was actually looking for. So I'm going to put this out on the weekly time frame to begin with, and I'm going to show you then back to what I was looking at, like I said, around April time. So let's click on this one. So first things first, in April, I was expecting this 3 to not quite be complete. I wanted this to stop in terms of the ceiling, so the grey box being the ceiling. We had stochastics backing this up, but we had a slight false bar on the weekly time frame. So anticipating a slight move up into this box potentially, and then the drop down for the 4. And this is what we're looking at. So from April all the way through now, up into the box, we actually looked at near the top of the box, and then ultimately drop down for the 4. So we might see this as the 4, giving me a 1 and a 2 pullback, and therefore back on the current chart, I'd be looking for the 1-2 move now sitting, like I said, all the way from March, where we April time. So in essence, I think this move is still underway. What I'll now do is I'll switch across to the advanced get software, and I'll just get rid of the charts, and I will put this one in. And then in the advanced get software, GBPJPY, I'm just looking at this particular move, giving us the 1-2 pullback, or AB pullback, if you will, for ultimately a drop down, kind of incoming. So I think on the weekly time frame, which is what I'm really keen on, this is what I'm seeing. And I think the fact that we've now had this move, to me, it's probably more confirmation of the 4. So like I said, my assumption is the 1-2 move is in, 1-2, the pullback here. And bear in mind, this is the weekly time frame, and up. That would be my expectations, given we've had the 1-2 and the 3 here, back for a 4. So down on the daily, I think the assumption at the moment is we are making technically a 5. I just feel that that 5 might actually be this one, and therefore we might come back down for a double bottom, creating something like this. But then the expectation is to take this move ultimately long. So that's the first one in terms of GBP JPY. So I'll go back to the the actual charts themselves on TradingView. Now, the second one I was looking at, let me get out to this one. The second one I was looking at, and again, this will be another chapter, is the Aussie dollar. This one is one of my favorite pairs, and this is actually one I'll be taking very, very soon in terms of an entry. So the expectations on this, again, go back to the 11th of April, was that we were in this 3 to 4 move down. I think we could have easily had another move up, just like the GBP. I don't think we were actually solid there in this move. So in Wyckoff terms, potentially this being a UTAD before the move down. And therefore, I was aiming only specifically for the 4 before looking at any entry on a daily time frame. So just play this one out at the moment. And, clear as day, we had another test of that top, which means this was the height of the distribution, and then ultimately down. So the 4, I feel, is pretty much in. We've got the weekly time frame now overbought, as oversold on the stochastic, and therefore my expectations on the Aussie dollar would actually be a long on this one, given the current circumstance in terms of DXY. So we've hit a key level, as I've got highlighted here. We've hit inside the box, comfortable with that for my 4 pullback. We got a weekly stochastic that is actually oversold. So the expectations now is that potential move that we're in is actually the next 0 to 1 leg up. I'd like to see a pullback down to the box, and then basically my entry being this to take this one long. So again, quite comfortable with. I don't think I'm going to need to go into the advanced get to show this one. This one's pretty obvious. Then we've got the EURJPY. So in terms of the chapters, like I said, around 7 minutes in on this. If you were looking at this particular pair, I'll put this into YouTube as I've suggested. So again, I think we've already had a double top here. We might get a little pushback up. This one's actually again on a weekly time frame. So the expectation here was 3 not quite in. This could be now the new 3. So a little peak above. We had a false bar down low on the weekly time frame. So a little move up before the drop down is basically the expectation on this one. So we had obviously the move up, confirming the 3 wasn't in, and now the move down. So again, I'm kind of looking for this. I'll have a look at this one in the advanced get software in a second. But the expectations is that, 3 move up, 4 down, and now I'm actually keen to look a bit closer at some daily entries. So I'll just flip across now to the advanced get one again. I'll stick this in. I'll leave the charts in the background. So in terms of the advanced get, I'm actually looking for the EURJPY, and the expectations currently on the EURJPY is very similar to the GBPJPY. I think we've had, or having currently, the 4 move. This has given us the push back down. We might only get a double bottom, as I said in the last one, and then the expectations potentially is to take this one a little bit long. So yeah, exactly as I'm suggesting here, I think the 4 ultimately in, and therefore this being the 1 move up, pull back for 2, possibly a double bottom, and then we go again. Now, the beauty of trading this particular method is that if we're wrong in the 4 actually being completed, it just means we don't enter the trade yet. So a little bit frustrating because it'll take a little bit longer and another couple of weeks to play itself out. But the benefit is when we're in these trades, we're running a 5 from the 4 all the way up in something like this, just to give you some kind of idea. Something in terms of the Euro JPY, the forecasted position on this is around 140. We currently sat down around 127. So on a weekly time frame, it is a very, very nice trade overall. If I step a fib extension on this, so I'm just going to go from the low up to the 1 and then back down for my 2, then yeah, realistically, we've actually got a 2618 around 147, so even higher again on this move, where we've actually got the 137. So realistically, anything within this range for me is actually going to be a fair target. I'll probably just keep a trailing stop running if I take this trade on at all. So yeah, again, similar move up to this. So GBP, JPY, and Euro JPY, very comparable for me, in my opinion there. Then we're going to switch back to the charts again. So I'm just going to put this one back on and look at the next pair. We then have down here GBPUSD. Let's just load up GBPUSD. Okay, so you can see that they were all in comparable positions back in April, and I've talked about this on a couple of streams. Just think of it that when we had the COVID spike, whether it was down or up, the longs and shorts of that was it hit a value area, which is similar to saying, you know, every plane landed in the airport at the same time, and now we're actually looking for the planes to take off, which means in Elliott terms, we're actually in the same move, the same cycle. 0, 1, you know, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, and therefore 3 to 4 from April through to now. So I've got a little bit of a caveat on this one. I said I'm not really a major fan looking at this one at the time. The stochastic wasn't quite where I wanted it to be, and therefore I think again 3 up a little bit before 4 down. So very similar to the EURJPY one just now. I think we were looking for a slight move up, which we had, creating potentially a new 4, sorry, a new 3, and then down ultimately for a 4. So for me, pound dollar is not quite as far along in the cycle as where the Euro JPY is. So if I come across then to the advanced get again, let's put this in back on top. Now, in terms of the advanced get, I'm going to go GBP USD. And I kind of feel that, well, actually, it could even be further along looking at this, but I just feel there's a little bit more to come. So I think what we're going to have on a smaller time frame is potentially something that looks like this, giving us, because I think the dollar is expecting a bit more strength. So I think for me, my assumption would be something like this, giving us this type of pattern, almost a W pattern, before we get that reversal. If I come down on the daily time frame, just move across on this. Yeah, so on the daily time frame, I think, you know, the suggestion here is that we've got a 1, 2, 3, 4, which means the 5 is not quite complete. Although they've got a 5 marked up here, I think for me the 5 is more likely to come on back down, take out the current 3 down here, not get quite as low as this one, which means, you know, on a weekly time frame, you know, we're looking at 135.9 potentially before it takes off again. So again, comparable position GBPJPY, as well as EURJPY, as well as this one GBPUSD. So yeah, like I said, I'll keep going over and reiterating that these will be in chapters in terms of the YouTube video. So if you're joining the stream now, you know, ultimately I'm going to post these on YouTube as well, and they'll actually have the set chapters. Bitcoin will be kind of more towards the end. I'm covering the Forex pairs back from April, and then I'll jump into, you know, where and why and what I'm seeing in terms of the current Bitcoin situation. So we then have a Euro USD situation, and I find this very similar again. I think this was actually a little bit further ahead of where we were in terms of the Aussie dollar. This was quite comparable. However, I think although we were a bit further ahead, the 4 seemed a bit more obvious. I kind of felt that we might have actually had a bigger move down, and this was more just to do with the DXY and the dollar index itself. So for me, the assumption was back up a little bit to come back down to complete a new 4 later on. So that was the general idea. And there you have it. We had a move up back down for the 4. Not quite complete. So, you know, the assumption was early doors that if this was our 4 on the left-hand side, it would have been a 1 up and a 2 pullback. The 2 pullback ultimately took out the 4, giving us a new 4. And therefore, on the weekly time frame, I feel, again, very similar in terms of the positions. Let me just put in Euro USD. This is something we've covered in our Discord group kind of over and over and over again. I feel that where we are at the moment, we're actually now in this cycle on the, I suppose, the move up from here, giving us the 4 here. So just mark this up, basically starting from this point here, giving us a 3, and then this now being the new 4, which means ultimately we had down for an A, up for a B, and back down for a C, and therefore expecting on a daily time frame a 0 to 1, a 1 to 2 pullback, up for 3, back down for 4, and 5 taking out these kinds of highs. So that's my expectations on Euro USD as well. And then I'm going to jump into, what's the next pair? Next pair, USDJPY. So again, back at April, I'd done quite a lot of research on this in terms of the Elliott cycles back in April. So you'll see that they were all around April times the call. Obviously, we can't edit any of this in terms of trading views. So you'll see that the expectation was the same, and this is what we've called, months and months and months ago now. So the move for us was 4, I feel, was actually in. This is deep enough for a 4 for me. And therefore, the current move that we're in on USD JPY is a 0 to 1 up, giving us the first leg of the 4 to 5 move. And now we're in that pullback. So USD JPY is actually further ahead than majority of the pairs right now. And this is what I'm seeing right now. So on a weekly time frame, I feel that from the pullback, where was the channels go? USD JPY. Right, let me get rid of this one. JPY. So on the JPY move, I kind of get the impression that the actual starting point was, like I said, a little bit earlier on than actually on some of the others, giving us something like this. And therefore, I feel that we were still in, this is again on the weekly time frame. So I get the impression and the feeling that this was the move out 3 to 4. And like I said, some of these go back to April. So the markups are not, 100% on this. And therefore, this particular 4 is now more the assumption that from this particular move, we've had our 4 pullback here and given us now the 0 to 1. And this particular move, this channel down, which as you'll see in the way I've just drawn this, you'll actually see this being a bullish flag or a bullish continuation pattern. So I get the impression that we're still in this range down. There's a little bit more to come, which means for me the 2 is not quite over yet. As long as we don't come lower than this down here, we've actually got a nice 1-2 move. So expecting 2 down, maybe a little bit deeper, maybe another test to this one, because they are fractal. You're going to get the move inside the move inside the move and so on. So even if we assume that this now was the 2 pullback, we're going to have a 1 up, we're going to get a 2 back, and then we're going to get that move on up any which way. So for me, I think the situation is pretty clear there. I think we are in front, looking at this, of some of the other pairs, being Euro USD, Aussie USD, EURJPY, GBPUSD, and so on and so on. Okay, so the next one I'm going to cover is USDCAD. I can already see I've got a note on this one. So the note on this one is I wasn't a fan. I think that this will actually repaint, meaning that we're likely to get another lower low, kind of grind across sideways for a little bit longer. And although the stochastic is ready to rise, I get the impression that this particular move wasn't far enough along in terms of the Fibonacci extension. So I think looking at the 1618, that doesn't really give me more like a 1-to-1 or a 120% rather than 160%. So I get the feeling that the US dollar, Canadian dollar, and this was actually a monthly time frame rather than the daily. So I get the feeling that this was a little bit more sideways before we get that move, up. And then obviously we start the move up. So I think for me, that would have confirmed the 3. And therefore, we're actually slightly further behind some of these other pairs. So I'll just put in the Canadian dollar in the advanced get software. And let me just flip back over to advanced get. And I get the impression that we were a little bit further behind on this one, meaning that we're only now getting this particular 4 move. And therefore the 4 move will give us, a 5 move down. But I feel that, I suppose because it's also the inverse, we might actually see now as we get some more weakness on this particular DXY move down. and therefore down on the daily time frame, I'd be liking to see this move being the one, potentially a pullback two, and then giving us three down. So again, very similar as a position, as a situation. And I get the feeling that this particular move down now is going to be, after four is complete, we're going to get a nice move down given the weakness expected in DXY. So again, very comparable. Like I said, they were all pretty much the same. Now, again, if you're joining the stream on TradingView, um, this one's a little bit longer for me today than usual, but I've been covering a lot of the Forex pairs. If you watch this on YouTube, I will put these into chapters so you can kind of skip along to where you want to see in terms of Bitcoin, probably, overall. So I'm just going to finish off. I got another two pairs to finish. So NZDUSD. Now, this is going to be very, very similar to the Aussie dollar move, and therefore the Aussie dollar move giving us a 3 to 4 down. I think we were going to get a move back up to come back down, and I think that was obviously the play that I was actually looking for. So I'm just going to put this one back on. This is the New Zealand dollar USD, and then like I said, I think the expectations on this one was 4 up, giving us only 3 to 4. The current drawing I have, again, question mark, not quite completed, was basically suggesting that this could have been an A leg of an ABC swing before that completion. So that's the expectation, giving us a 0 to A down, an A back up to B, and this now completing for a C, which means, again, I think 4 has only now come in. And on the smaller time frame, I'll just flip across to the advanced get again. So New Zealand dollar USD. On the advanced get software, I think for me, the assumption on this one is that, yeah, 4 has only just come in. And therefore, on a smaller time frame, we'd be looking for the 1 move up, the 2 pull back, and then 3, off we go again. 4 pull back, and then 5, basically taking this up past the previous highs. So the forecast on this one would be, again, 770 or more. And that's what I'm expecting on this one. Nice pullback from here somewhere, which means a little bit of strength in the DXY shorter term. I'm very bearish DXY in the next couple of weeks, but I think on the daily time frame, we are likely to see a little bit of a push back up, sucker a few more longs in, and then take it down short properly this time. So advanced get. So finishing off USD Swiss franc. I mean, from the rest of what I've just gone through, hopefully you'll get to see, where these are, why I've been tracking these the way that I've been tracking them. This is kind of months and months and months in the making. So again, the inverse to majority of the pairs that I watch and I trade, I tend to trade about 5 pairs regularly. When I say regularly, it's only a handful of trades a year, but I actually monitor 13. And 13, that also includes SPX, it includes gold, as well as Bitcoin and XRP. So I don't really trade much in terms of Ethereum, but I got a venture capital business that we invest in blockchain, which covers certain other projects as well. So my main pairs are predominantly Forex, although I've traded crypto since 2011. It's Forex is what I do more or less day to day. So on this particular one, USD Swiss franc, like I said, on the inverse, the same as the last one, the Canadian dollar. I think we're coming down rather than up, giving us a 1, 2, the 3 being in, the 4. I would like to say that it was in, but the only problem I had is on the monthly time frame, we were only middle of the range in terms of the stochastic. So maybe the expectations was to take a slightly higher 4, which meant we would have seen this leg be in the A. I would have liked to have seen a pull down in terms of the B, and then a push back up for the finish of a C move before we start going any further. So yeah, I think at the moment this is the A. We've just had the B, and therefore I would really like to see a slightly deeper pullback, if I'm honest. So go a little bit higher. I haven't looked at this for a while in terms of the overall chart. So this is USD Swiss franc. And therefore the expectations, depending on where we are, how we middle of the range. So for me, this would be one I would actually just avoid at the moment. This kind of in no man's land. 4 seems to be in, and therefore what we could assume is that this being the 0 to 1, potentially a 2 if we were to take this as a 2 here. I just don't feel that this is impulsive enough yet for me to actually confirm this is a 2 to 3 move down as part of the bigger cycle 5 that looks something like this. So I'm just going to avoid the Swiss franc one at the moment. I'd like to see the stochastic give me some kind of indication on a weekly time frame at least. So yeah, so okay, so that's covering all of the Forex pairs. Like I said, I'll timestamp this. So that's 25 minutes in. I will timestamp that and then jump into BTC. And then in terms of BTC, there's a couple of things that I really want to cover. Again, what I'll do before covering that is I will just touch on some of the educational content that I've put out recently. Again, this is going to help you newer traders with understanding what I'm seeing, why I'm seeing, and why this is kind of longer term, kind of stuff. So in terms of where we are at the moment, I kind of feel that some tools worth looking at is pattern recognition, and I've just in a post on this one. There'll be a link in the description if you're watching on YouTube. So basically, there's a couple of patterns that we've seen forming, a couple of candlestick patterns, and this is one of the reasons I've kind of spent a bit of time putting this particular post together. And therefore, come and check this out on TradingView. I go into a little bit more depth in terms of our Discord channel, but the longs and shorts of this is use a couple of cheat sheets for what I'm actually seeing and identifying right now in terms of Bitcoin as a move, and where I think we are in the overall situation. So again, I've covered Bitcoin in one or two of the last YouTube videos, and there's a couple of things that is really intriguing to me because the assumption on the advanced get is we're at a 0 here, we come up for a 1, back for a 2, this now giving us a 3, which means we're anticipating a 4 pullback anyway before a 5. Now, if you know anything in terms of Elliott wave cycles and moves, the actual waves would suggest that this particular move 3 can't necessarily be the shortest. So we got confirmation that it's already longer than the 1. But if you run some Fibonacci extensions on this, we're actually only looking at a high now up and above this kind of level. Okay, now 65 to 70k would be quite cruel in terms of composite man overall. The stochastic is kind of in confluence with this as well right now. So one way or the other, I think we're going down for the 4, even in a bullish scenario. And the reason I say that even if it is a bullish scenario is there's a little bit of logic still here that we can't really kind of ignore, I guess, in terms of the bigger picture. So if I turn this into a monthly chart, there's a couple of key things that's worth mentioning. First things first, we've got the stochastic around the 50% marker. So just like I've said about the USD Swiss franc, it's kind of in no man's land at the moment, which means it's not a trade that I'm really keen on until I get some kind of bias one way or the other. Now, if we take the fact that this was basically a 3 move on the monthly, we would be seeing an a B, which means we're looking for a C. Okay. Now, there's no reason that this can't come down lower than the previous A. That is if to say we are actually in a monthly ABC corrective pattern right now. Now, I kind of like this and this particular logic more because if I was playing Composite Man, this would be the kind of scenario that I'd love to play because I think this is going to sucker in a lot of people on the premise that we are likely to go now, 100 grand, 250 grand, some people talking 750. I think the truth of the matter is if you run your Fibonacci extensions, we've got a target which is almost just slightly higher than the current all-time high. So if we assume an A, B, C move down, and we now assume that there was a little bit of a pattern in here before giving us the 0, and like I said, this then giving us 0, a 1 sitting here, a 2 back down here, and we currently at a 3. In a bullish scenario, I'd be expecting a 4 down and a 5 up, right? Now, ultimately, what you're actually seeing here, now depending on, whether we go up a little bit more first and so on, is we've got some logic, which some might say, oh, it's, it's an inverse head and shoulders and this, that, and the other. So there is some logic to that. There's some really solid reasoning behind this as another kind of scenario. If you imagine retail jumping in, especially the orders that you're bound to see at the 65k plus levels, what's to say that this doesn't then drop like a rock from that particular point? So right now, I'm waiting for the character on the pullback to determine whether or not this is still the monthly bearish move or whether we haven't quite confirmed. Now, this is probably best if I show you this one actually on the advanced get software, okay? So in terms of the advanced get software right now, if I come across to Bitcoin and stick this on the monthly, now what you have to remember with Elliott is the patterns need to complete in the smaller time frames to confirm the bigger time frames. Although you work down from the bigger time frames back to the smaller, the problem that I have with this particular move right now is let's just draw a zero from here. I'll put this one in red. So back down for the 2. And the assumption on the software is that this is the 3 and the 4 potentially is not quite in yet. So I'm not going to draw the 4 just yet. Now, if I step down onto the weekly time frame, what you're gonna need to see with this, and what we have to I guess, kind of look at this overall, is that from the 2, we would now be expecting a 5 wave move. So I'm going to change this to say green, and I've covered this in depth in one of the last YouTube videos. So perhaps I'll try to put this up as well as a tag on the YouTube side. 1 to 2 giving us this. Now, if we assume that this could easily be a 3, 4, which advanced get is suggesting that it's not, okay? So the first thing for me, the fact that the advanced get software is suggesting that this wasn't the 4 means that this could easily still be informed, which means if this is the 4 on the weekly, we're likely to get the completion up here around this kind of level, like I said, 70k realistically. And what I think we're going to get, if we do get this as a scenario, is we're going to get this becoming the completion of the monthly 3. Okay, so if that makes a little sense, the 3 that we have plotted right now wouldn't technically be finished if the monthly move 3 is still 3 and the weekly move 3 to 4 hasn't completed the 5 yet, if that makes sense. So the problem being is I think we're going to get a 3 here at this kind of level, and the fact that they've still got a 3 showing here is something that gives me a bit of comfort in this particular play. The Fibonacci extension levels also work, and therefore if we assume that we're in a weekly move like this, 3 to 4, completing a 5 up at 70k would only give us a very, very short 4 to 5 move back down before we go into a monthly 4 move from 3. So again, put kind of composite man's hat on, and I'd be thinking to myself, what would be the best way to sucker more people in? And I feel that taking it to a new all-time high only to drop it for months on end would actually do the most amount of damage in the retail space. So I think very, very smart if that is what we kind of see play out. But I think very, very cruel, because I think the 65k buyers will be the ones expecting that to go to 100k plus. So there's less and less logic for me for this to actually be the move that I would buy and hold. I would like to see another drop down any which way. So let's just flip back to the charts in TradingView. And therefore, I'd like to see, one way or the other, this move giving us the 3 weekly, the 4 weekly, and the 5 weekly here. The 5 weekly would actually be only then completion of the 3 on the monthly. That doesn't really look like a W. So there's my W. So ultimately, if we were to assume that that was what could play itself out, I think, like I said, it's going to be a very, very cruel time overall. So I just want confirmation before taking this long. I think if I was to take the pullback 4 now long, I'd be looking to get out at probably the 65 level anyway, regardless of where this could run up. We could easily run up into 80k. I'm not saying that it's not likely. I think realistically, the assumption of 70 to 80k potentially with a little bit of retail hype, we take that level out at 65. I just feel that if we haven't yet completed this monthly, which is what the software is suggesting, then I think we got a little bit deeper to come back, and there's nothing stopping that coming all the way back down, 30k. If we run that as a figure on the monthly pullback, we are looking at, let's put that back on here, we are looking at on the monthly pullback, we would actually be looking at a much bigger move. Let me just put a film, I'm just going to do this behind the scenes. We'd actually be looking at roughly a 618 or 618 pullback. We'd be roughly looking at 35k. So can you imagine hitting 65k and then dropping very rapidly back down to 35k? I think a lot of hearts will be broken in that particular move. So that's what I'm seeing in terms of Bitcoin. I know this video is very long-winded compared to a lot of what I do, but I haven't done one for a while, and I thought it'd be good to give a very, very big, broad overview of the actual market. So just to finish off on, I got a couple of charts that I've actually created recently. So if you haven't seen these, it's worth checking these out. I've put together some cartoons again as to what I'm seeing. And this particular one, this one with Biden and Trump on the front, this was just talking about events that's happened in the last 18 months. You have to think we've had Brexit, we've had COVID, we've had oil go below zero, we've had an all-time high with gold, we've actually had an all-time high with the S&P, as well as the US elections. So the last 18 months, 2 years have been very peculiar, but I think you can see from the Elliott wave cycles I covered earlier on exactly why I think we are where we are in a lot of these situations. So on this particular one, I've just covered some NFT stuff as well within our Discord server. So I've actually just created another video, and I'll put a link to the video now above, for how to create your own NFT without any coding skills, as well as without any real knowledge on the blockchain. I know it's interesting for some people, so if you're interested in that, check this video out. A couple of other educational pieces that I've done. Again, I'll put some of these links in below. So pivot points, a lot of people see pivot points as a couple of lines on the chart, but do you actually know what's behind them? How you use them, how you calculate them, a couple of strategies that you could utilize in terms of this. So again, worth a read if you're new to trading or actually use pivot points in your trading. This was one I think many people actually overlooked this one. I kind of felt that with what I've done on the Wyckoff posts, this one would be useful for some of the followers that we have in terms of how the Dow theory encompasses the Elliott waves, the Wyckoffs, the Fibonacci levels. So again, educational content, just showing some of the examples of how they fit, why they fit. Probably worth a read if you are, an Elliott trader, if you're into Wyckoff, and probably you've seen the Wyckoff in the social media over the last couple of months if you're purely crypto. So probably worth you looking at this one as well. And then lastly, all I'm going to do to kind of finish off is a little bit of a plug, really, is I've just launched the first Mayfair NFT. So like I said, I've created a video that I've just put the link up above, and I've explained how we actually put this live. So again, link down below in the description. And this is our first Michael Saylor driving his bull up along the bull run with obviously some giant Bitcoin. So yeah, I think it's just a bit of fun, but worth touching on before finishing. So have a great week, guys, and more YouTube videos in the next couple of days. So cheers all.